Breaking news, very sad news overnight that Matthew Perry, the person who played Chandler in Friends, best known for that role, of course, has very sadly died. Steve, you're very welcome to Talk TV this morning. How are you doing?
Peter, good morning to you. What a shocking, sad start to the day. This story has sent kind of shockwaves through the showbiz community and all the millions of fans of Friends over the years and over the decades. Matthew Perry found dead in his hot tub in Los Angeles. The news broke overnight here, but yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. in Los Angeles, of course. He would, like you said a moment ago, was Chandler in Friends, one of the greatest comedy characters that you and I and a whole generation of people have grown up with. As you say, Friends currently on Netflix. I know young people who've relived those great TV programs over the last few years. And of course, all of us, you know, if you're around 40, you would have grown up with Friends. These characters were a part of your lives. And it's fair to say Matthew Perry was the part of Friends that we all remember.
He certainly was. He was certainly the funniest one, but he was cynical and actually played quite a tortured character in that as well. If you think about Friends, there's actually quite a lot, Steve, that were very, very serious issues. There were things like his father was trans, for example, which was a big thing at the time. There were Ross was married to someone who turned out to be a lesbian. There were all sorts of different kind of, you know, one person was estranged from their father and had to sort of start again. There was a struggling actor. There were lots of quite serious issues, but of course it was so funny as well. I just want to look at a little clip now of some of Matthew Perry's comedy genius. This is from Friends.
Which one is mine? Whichever one you want, man. Whichever one you want. Not that one. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's the stuff. Oh. Do we dare? We dare. Oh.
There's back. It's just one of those wonderful scenes where that sort of bromance between Chandler and Joey, it really was a very, very special thing. I was actually watching my favourite episode, Steve, last night, which is called The One Where No One's Ready, and it's all done in the apartment of Rachel and Monica, and there's this brilliant little subplot between Chandler and Joey where Joey won't get up from a chair, and then he says, right, I'll get up, and then he takes the cushions off the chair, and Chandler just goes, you know, how can you do that? And he says, well, I'm just doing it. And he says, but the cushions are the essence of the chair. I mean, it's just, he's just so sort of outraged by that. He was a brilliant, brilliant actor, but he battled his demons too.
He really did. He released an autobiography just a couple of years ago called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And if you didn't realise how much addiction played a part of his life, well, he says it all in this book. You know, he was in rehab 17 times over the years. He actually said he can't remember the final 3 seasons of Friends. He can't remember doing it, being part of it, acting it. Incredibly sad story. It seems from all the tributes from people who knew him, they said he was actually in a really good place as of late. And indeed, yesterday afternoon, he was playing a game of pickleball, which is a bit like tennis, before this incident happened, before he was found dead in the hot tub in LA. Police have said so far, as far as we know, no drugs have been found on the scene. So it would seem this is incredibly tragic, out of blue incident that's just sent shockwaves. We're all shocked and sad.
There was something he talked about when that book was released, and something he wrote about in his book, and that was that at the end of one series, it was a series where he proposes to Monica and the two of them eventually get married. And he was a bit, I can't remember the sequence, but he was certainly, I think he was a bit porky in that scene. His weight moved massively because of the addiction, because of many things he was doing. And then the next series, the first episode, which they filmed, you know, a number of months later, he was extremely thin. And it was meant to be literally, she's just said yes to the proposal. And then it's, you know, it's the same apartment, it's the same scene, it's meant to be later that night, yet his appearance has changed dramatically, and people who had watched the episodes months apart wouldn't have seen it. But I actually went back on Netflix and looked at those, and really there was so much going on behind the scenes, behind the laughter.
Absolutely, and I don't know if you remember there's also the reunion episode when they got back together, and it was really, really evident that things were not going well. He didn't seem to be there.
He didn't look well, and he didn't seem engaged in that reunion. Yeah.
Not at all. And I think that was a big kind of warning for lots of people that, you know, as you say, behind the scenes, things were so different. It was almost, we had two Matthew Perrys, which is really shocking, isn't it? Because he was the character of Chandler. We loved him, we got him, we understood him. He represented friends, you know, people in our friendship circles. Maybe we were him. I recognized a lot of myself in his character. So that character really spoke to us. I suppose, Peter, it's the ultimate Hollywood tragedy playing out in front of us, isn't it?
You're absolutely right.
Really sad.
You're absolutely right. Steve, thank you very much indeed. Steve Denyer, Virgin radio presenter and showbiz expert as well. Thank you very much indeed. Claire, this is just for a generation. Really, I grew up watching Friends. I was a teenager when it was on air. It was something I watched every Friday night. It was on Channel 4. And Matthew Perry was an iconic person, and we had no idea as teenagers what he was going through.
No, indeed. And I think the first series came out about 27 years ago. Right, so you're talking nearly almost 30 years ago. It was something at the time that I wasn't actually into, but generationally, as you said, it seems to hit the mark. Now, there's reports that in the first season of Friends, Matthew Perry, post-filming, was being driven straight to the rehab.
Right.
So the addiction, his propensity to overdo things was clear even then. Now look back at his life, but when he left Canada to go to, I think it was LA straight after, he was a really successful junior tennis champ. You don't get to there unless you've got discipline, integrity, and resilience. Now, transfer that forward then to the adulation. He's quoted as saying, I wanted the adulation, I wanted the seat in the restaurant, I wanted the big bucks. But then when they came, it seemed to add to a very solitary existence for him. And the whole irony for me is the fact that it's called Friends. But indeed, not any one of the cast members actually knew his internal struggles that he was going through. I'm
actually really, the hairs are on the back of my neck, Claire, from what you're saying there. That is a really, really brilliant analysis. Mike, Indian is here as well. Were you a fan of Friends, Mike? Did you watch it?
I was, but actually for me, my sister was a huge fan of Friends and we watched it a lot growing up, but I always remember Matthew Perry for his versatilities as a comic performer as well. He was an improvisational comic like myself, a very gifted one. But there were 3 episodes of The West Wing in which he appeared. That's right. And you know, episodes like Scrubs. So it's interesting because obviously the dominance of Friends led to these huge opportunities. But if you want to see his versatility as a dramatic performer, go back, look at those episodes, because he comes in at these hugely pivotal points. And it's one of these things, because Emily Proctor was the character he replaced in that from CSI Miami, so another very prominent show at the time. Look at Matthew Perry's dramatic ability as well.
You're absolutely right.
One of the most technical
there was that versatility there. I'd forgotten about The West Wing, which is actually I'm an even bigger fan of than Friends, and of course he played quite a serious character.
He did,
there.
Joe Quincy, an associate White House counsel, so he had
worked out and he got rid of the vice president. He worked out the vice president.
Exactly, yes, and then he comes back for the Chief Justice. So key points in the series, key developments, and he brings gravitas to those roles as well. And he has a huge number of guest credits on shows like Cougar Town, Scrubs as well, to name but a couple. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
That's right. And that was Aaron Sorkin. And Aaron Sorkin, someone who did not deal with actors who were not
big post West Wing project as
fantastic.
well.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen actually that Maggie Wheeler, who is an actress who played Janice, who was Chandler's on-off love interest in the early series. You remember the laugh, the Janice laugh through her nose, and she has just written on Twitter, "What a loss! The world will miss you, Matthew Perry. The joy you brought to so many in your too short lifetime will live on. I feel so very blessed by every creative moment we shared," and they certainly did share many wonderful creative moments, and that's, I'm sure, how Matthew Perry will be remembered. But of course we must remember the fact that he was, through the laughter there were tears as well. And Charlie Lawson is an actor, a famous actor here in the UK. He played Jim McDonald for many, many years in Coronation Street and joins me now. And I know, Charlie, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to be on here. I know you haven't battled addiction yourself, but you've seen what fame is like. You've seen what the people buying you drinks and the problems that people have, and the excesses and so on. I mean, presumably, seeing this news, you have some idea, at least, of what Matthew Perry went through.
Well, I'm on here, Peter, because I'm a pal, and I've never reached the dizzy heights that Matthew Perry did. However, in our own little world of show business over here, Curry was enormous, and all that went with it was enormous, and it's still enormous now. And I've left a long time ago, but I have been back about 7 or 8 times. But Listen, there's a lot to becoming an actor. There's a lot more to you than there is that people see going on. There's a lot of internal stuff that goes on in order to enable you to become an actor. It's as simple as that. If you're bearing your soul and you're doing this and doing that, you are a particular type of person, and that can lead to problems. And I'm not going to name individuals because I don't think it's fair, but I don't think Kevin Kennedy would mind me telling you at all that he battled addiction for various reasons, which are personal to Kev, but some of us knew them. And he's now been sober and clean for about, I think, over 20 years. And having said that, he lends his life now to helping other people with addictions, as does his wife Claire, who had the same addiction problems herself.
And he was just, I mean, he was a really, really, like yourself, very, I mean, everyone knew who Curly Watts was at that time. Yeah. But the stuff, did you have any sense when you were acting with Kevin Kennedy what was happening? Or, I mean, was it something that emerged later? Just tell us a little bit about how you, as someone who wanted to support him, who was his friend, how much you actually knew and how much people can kind of keep it internally when you're even a very public figure.
Kevin was very, very good at what he did. Everybody knows that. But he knew, and he knew what was going on inside. And none of us were really aware how bad his problems were until he fronted it up and told us. And then, you know, it was a question of managing him. I got a phone call one day from the then producer, I have said this to his face, and I'll say it again. I think Kevin was slightly thrown to the wolves with press conferences and what have you. But this is what happens when you're famous. Now, he's a success. However, there are sort of two types of addictive personality, and there's no doubt that I have one, in the sense that I had an absolute ball when I was in Corrie. The fame was wonderful for me. I enjoyed every drop of wine, every good morsel of food, every upgrade to first class, every hotel upgrade. I had an absolute ball. And, you know, I've told Richard and Judy this in one famous interview that, well, I don't really remember my fourth year there, you know what I mean? Because it was heavy. But importantly to note, I was actually having a great time. I wasn't battling anything. And it's clear that Matthew and other actors I've known, Michael Elphick, etc., are a different sort of personality, and they are battling very, very hard. And Matthew Perry, I think, would probably be a way a league above anybody.
But even it says a lot, doesn't it? I mean, you've criticised their Coronation Street bosses and so on. I mean, it says a lot that Warner Brothers, who are, you know, one of the biggest media brands, broadcasting brands in the world, could not save him. They could send him to rehab, they could support him as much as they could. I'm sure there were many efforts and many things we'll never know about in terms of how Matthew Perry was supported. But still, he has come to this. We don't know the circumstances, we need to be careful about that. But certainly at the age of 54, he is dead, and he is someone who had a very, very tragic life amongst the fame.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin had some great help. I simply, let me clarify this. I think there was a decision taken, there was an incident, and a decision was taken to put him in front of the cameras, and he was to admit his problems and then go to rehab, and he won. Now, Warner Brothers did what they can, but when you're in the Premier League of mental health problems and addiction problems, and that's all thrown into one, you are in the brown stuff, and it's very, very difficult to get out of it. I know a couple of actresses who suffer from what I've just explained, and they are working, and they're working intensely and extremely hard. And I'm in a fortunate position where I know them, they know I love them, and they can speak to me on the phone, or they can come to me or whatever. Now, that doesn't make me a bloody saint or anything, you know. It just so happens that I care about them deeply, and I know them very, very well. It doesn't make me Saint Charlie or anything like that, and I'm not pretending to be that. I'm just telling you that I know people the good general public out there assume are absolutely fine. They're on 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and they're brilliant, and they must be earning 175k a year. Well, let me tell you, there are people out there who are not okay, and they manage their lives to the best of their abilities. And as long as they have a strong partner or friends that love them, they will plow through until inevitably something will crash. And I'm not trying to be dramatic.
No, of course. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people will identify with that. Charlie, thank you so much. Charlie Lawson there, an actor who has been speaking to us this morning, of course played Big Jim McDonald in Coronation Street amongst many other roles as well. And he's right, Claire, isn't he? I mean, there is, I suppose, as well, I mean, I'm not trying to be an amateur psychologist here, but for people whose job it is to pretend to be someone else, they can often hide these things.
Of course, that's what an actor does. The actor is reacting, and if you read any of Stanislavski, the great acting coach,
studied at GCSE,
he would say, you have to completely immerse yourself, and it must be terribly difficult to come off set being someone that Matthew Perry actually has said that he identified so much with the character. In fact, he's quoted as saying as well, when the creators, Kaufman, had created it, he read the script and he thought, gosh, has someone been following me for a year that's picked up my mannerisms, my traits, my sense of humour? But also what he brought was great comic timing, and his facial expressions. So I would go one step further and actually say he was playing himself.
That's a really good point, actually, Mike. I mean, we've just got a load of love for Matthew Perry here. Edie Weeds has been in touch on Twitter to say, I didn't fully get Matthew Perry's Friends comedy genius until a boyfriend rewound a funny scene between Joey and Phoebe and told me to watch Chandler's face during it. That was just his reactions, even when he wasn't the main character. We've had Paul on text as well say, hi Peter, very sad news about Matthew Perry, but there is also another tragedy that happened yesterday in sport. Adam Johnson, an ice hockey player, died in a horrific accident on the ice in the UK. I hope any segment on sport and talk today highlights this loss. Every life is precious. You're absolutely right, Paul. I didn't know about that, and I'm very, very sorry to hear it. Cliff in Berkshire says, it never ceases to amaze me how many comedians and comic actors have tragic lives off stage and out of the limelight. You're nodding at that, Claire.
Well, it's known that a good few comedians and comic actors actually are disposed to depressive periods, and it's very difficult. It's that mask that they wear almost to hide it. But addicts do hide things. They're great at hiding things. They will hide the drug paraphernalia. They will hide the empty bottles. They will hide everything to try and make their life normal.
Yes.
And for the sake of those living with people who do have addictions, and I'm not talking specifically about Matthew Perry here, I'm talking about it in general terms, it's incredibly difficult for the families and friends around them to support them and help them get through it.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean, and it is... I think unless you've been through it, you can't really understand it as well, because there are so many people. I know someone who has an alcoholic in the family, and it's just so difficult to actually negotiate that, because you have compassion, but also you need a bit of tough love.
Well, you do have compassion, and you do have love, both fraternal and possibly romantic love as well, if your partner has an addiction problem, an issue. And it is incredibly difficult to draw the line between, look, I'm actually not helping you, but I'm coming from a place of love. This is what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has to come from within.
It does. Sean Donaldson has been in touch this morning. Peter, like yourself, actually watched Friends last night. I grew up watching it on Channel 4 on Friday nights. Exactly the same, Sean, same as me. As Big Charlie Lawson mentioned, Kevin Kennedy, he played Curly Watson in Coronation Street, and the late Michael Elphick had battled their demons. It's just not easy to get away from these demons. And that's right, Mike, isn't it? There's so many people and so much we don't see as well.
I think if you want to understand Matthew Perry's genius, you need to go back and look at the Friends outtakes. When he brings his skills as an improviser into those scenes, he can mix things up a little bit as well. And his castmates are nearly always on their toes because they're never quite sure what he's going to come out with. And that, again, is the versatility, the brilliance of the performer as well. And there's a great SNL sketch where he's doing a lecture on sarcasm that you can find on YouTube, and everyone wants to kind of see how he channels the character, as Claire so wonderfully said there. Watch that skit, because he obviously embodies it and brings it in. But again, great dramatic roles that he had there too. And the only shame of something like Friends is that obviously it's a great show, but I think it deprived us of seeing him in other things. Of course, we saw a clip earlier of the show he had in the West End recently as well. again, a brilliant, versatile performer taken from us too soon. A very sad story.
Absolutely. The Samaritans is a place that is available, a line that's available to anybody who is struggling to cope. It provides a safe place to talk 24 hours a day, and you can phone them just on a 6-digit number, 116 123. You can also, if you're suffering from any of these issues, or you just want to find out a bit more information, maybe there's someone you know who's affected, you can ring the Samaritans 116 123, or you can go to our website talk.tv/helplines. There's a load of information there.